Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. First and foremost, I want to apologize. I am still under the weather, so my voice probably sounds a little bit weird, but this video has a time constraint, so I still wanted to go ahead and get it out. Steam is doing their annual winter sale. It's going from now until January 2nd at 10 a.m. Pacific. There are a ton of amazing deals available right now. So I want to make sure all of you all were aware so you could go ahead and jump on it. I'm going to walk through a lot of those games. Keep in mind the prices that I mentioned are for US dollars. I have no idea what it's going to translate to if you are using a foreign currency. Before we get into the main part of the video, I do want to drop a couple of honorable mentions that do not have discounts, but I definitely feel like should be on your radar and will be coming out soon. Swordhaven Iron Conspiracy is currently in early access, so of course it doesn't have a discount on it, but I had an amazing time live streaming this game a couple of weeks ago. It's a isometric CRPG from the same team that made Adam RPG. It looks really cool. Definitely check it out if you haven't already. And then the other game is New Arc Line. Once again, it's in early access, so it doesn't have a discount on it right now, but it's basically looking like an Arcanum successor. It's all about magic going up against tech. Has a really cool aesthetic. A lot of the powers and abilities that you can use look amazing. Interesting choices and consequences for some of the decisions you're able to make in early access. I'm absolutely really excited about this game, hoping that it comes out sometime in 2025. So make sure both of these games are on your radar. With that, let's go ahead and get into the general list. I'm going to start with games that I myself have never played, but multiple people on the channel, or really many people on the channel, have been recommending these games, so I do plan to play them at some time, and I feel like many of you will be interested in these discounts. First up on the list is a game that I definitely plan to play in January, Kingdom Come Deliverance. It's known for a very authentic world setting, makes you feel like you're in a completely different place. You truly start at the bottom, so the character you play as knows nothing about swordplay. My understanding is he doesn't even know how to read. The game is noted as being a little bit janky in spots, and so even now, I think mods are supposed to help smooth some of it out, but it's not going to be quite as smooth an experience as you might expect from some other titles, but from everything I've heard, it's well worth it. And a sequel for the game comes out in February, so my hope is to play through the entire thing in January. It has an 80% discount right now that brings the game down to $5.99. Next up on the list is Underrail. I did one live stream for this game and came to the conclusion it's absolutely something I plan to play through. It's known for being a very tough CRPG, so it's not for the faint-hearted, but for those of you that love diving into the mechanics and love challenging experiences, Underrail is definitely going to give you that. There are a ton of mechanics for you to play with. There's a massive amount of content in this game. It was very well supported by its one-man developer. Just seemed like an amazing experience. It's supposed to get a sequel, or basically a standalone expansion, Underrail Infusion. They announced it, I think, sometime in early 2024, so it's very possible that it'll be ready for 2025 release, but there's been no recent news about it as of yet. Currently, Underrail has a 70% discount for $4.49. Next up, Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth. Never ever played any of the Yakuza games, but I've heard great things about them. Always seemed like they had a fantastic sense of humor, and I've heard great things about the combat as well, especially with Infinite Wealth. It seemed like a lot of people who like the series were very happy about this game. I've also heard great things about the writing of some of the party members and NPCs that you meet, that it can make them into characters you feel a lot of empathy for. So there's a 50% discount on it right now that brings the game down to $34.99. And then the final game on this list, Ghost of Tsushima. I have heard So many good things about this game, that the environments just look beautiful and amazing. The samurai combat just makes you feel like you're truly one of those warriors. Incredible campaign that just puts you in the midst of a completely different culture. Just so many things supposedly to love about this particular game. A sequel has already been announced where you are going to be playing as a different character. So I definitely want to get this game played before that comes out. Currently, it has a 20% discount, bringing the price down to $47.99. All right, now let's move on to games that I have played before, but they are not CRPGs. Those of you who have been around for a while know that this is mainly a CRPG channel, but every so often I dip outside of that realm. These are some of the games that have major deals that are not CRPGs that I feel like are well worth you taking a look at. First up is what I consider to be probably the best deal on this entire list, the Mass Effect Legendary Edition. In my opinion, it is the best series in gaming. I did a Let's Play of Mass Effect 1 and probably about a third of Mass Effect 2 on the channel. I plan to circle the block on that and probably do an entire live stream of the whole series when we get an official announcement for when Mass Effect 5 is coming out. I absolutely love these games. There's just about any aspect of gaming you can think of, Mass Effect does extremely well. And the Legendary Edition is all 3 games in one, all of them standardized and updated, so you'll have a much better experience even if you've played those games before. Currently, this series has a 92% discount, bringing it down to $4.79. $4.79 for 3 games that together, again, I believe are the best series in gaming. Absolutely a stellar deal. Possibly the second best deal on this list, The Witcher Trilogy also has a massive discount. So these are, again, 3 games together. They're not standardized the way the Legendary Edition was, so all of the bugs or issues that you might have felt from the game originally might very well still be there. The original Witcher is in the process of getting a remake, so it'll be interesting to see what direction that game ends up taking. But we already know the Witcher series is amazing, one of the most incredible storylines ever produced in gaming. Some of the most amazing, memorable characters. If you haven't played the Witcher series, it is well worth it. The first game is definitely kind of janky. It doesn't hold up graphically well to today, but from a storyline standpoint, it's amazing. And while it's not necessary to enjoy Witcher 2 or 3, it is going to make certain aspects of those games hit even harder. So it's well worth your time. It's currently got an 87% discount for $2.69. Amazing deal. Next up is Cyberpunk 2077. The game is fixed. Cyberpunk had an incredibly poor launch, but it's been through a ton of patches, along with giving a DLC that, from everything I have heard, is just absolutely amazing. I played the game when it first launched, but I haven't played it since then, so I definitely at some point plan to circle back. The graphics in this game are just incredible, put you right into Night City. There's a ton of different mechanics so you can build up your character exactly the way you want to, and Cyberpunk just pretty much constantly feels like all around great fun. There is a sequel on the way. CDPR is already working on it. Not clear yet what the timeline is for that to come out, but this is well worth you jumping into. Currently, it has a 55% discount for $26.99. Next up, my personal 2024 Game of the Year, Metaphor Refantazio. Once again, the graphics are amazing. Just incredible art. Things look amazing no matter what part of the game you are in. Fantastic mechanics. The archetype system that has all of your different party members using archetypes that really reflect their own personality and worldview, and allowing you to dibble and dabble in different areas depending on what you would prefer. It just keeps getting better and better as you go through the game. The world that they have built up also is amazing. One of the best interpretations of a racist, unjust world that I have ever seen. Everywhere you go, people hate you just because of the way that you look. People have strong feelings about your competency, and you're basically trying to fight against that and make the world a better place. It's a fascinating journey, especially in today's times, that I think is well worth going through for just about anybody. Also, the music is so incredible in this game, really, really hard hitting, especially in combat. Currently, it has a 25% discount, bringing the price down to $52.49. Next up, another one of my favorite series all time, Mafia. This puts you in the role of someone who is a mobster, usually starting from the bottom and working their way up to the top. Mafia 1 and 2 had completely different stories, but I would say they're very similar games in terms of how they're structured. I loved being able to pull out a Tommy gun and just lay waste to my enemies. The combat set pieces in this game series were a lot of fun. Mafia 3 is a much different game. It comes off more like Saints Row or Grand Theft Auto as far as its quest structure. And unfortunately, it didn't do that well. It almost came off MMOish to some degree. But I feel like thematically and from a story standpoint, in a lot of ways, it was better than the first two Mafia games. It put you in the role of a black man who is running around in segregated United States. So you could walk into restaurants where they would refuse to serve you and basically be spoken to and treated in a bunch of really, really crazy ways. And you had to figure out how to adapt and operate in that society. I thought they did that so well. So freaking well. And being able to throw a Molotov cocktail into the middle of a KKK rally and mow them all down, it was just absolutely amazing. So I love the entire Mafia series. They did announce that a fourth game is coming out probably sometime next year. That's going to take you back to Sicily. I think that's very interesting as well. I'm going to miss having my Tommy gun, but hopefully the new setting and seeing the beginnings of Mafia is going to be worth it. Currently, this entire series, all three games, it's got an 85% discount, bringing it down to $14.93. Absolutely, this is worth you picking up and worth your time. Next up is the King's Quest collection. Many of you who have been following the channel know that King's Quest Air Today Gone Tomorrow is the game that really got me into playing video games. It's the first RPG that I really latched on to. This collection is all 7 games together. I love this series. One of the things I really appreciated about it is almost all the games have you basically investigating a mystery or a situation, and it's very easy to fail. Most of the items, in fact, really all of the items you pick up have a use. And if you just go around randomly using items without really thinking through what their use possibly could be, you're going to easily end up in a situation where you can no longer move forward. And the game doesn't telegraph it. The game doesn't tell you, oh crap, you shouldn't have done that. And it will absolutely let you fail. And I think we just don't get that anymore. It's really nice for some of those older games. You also really have to think some of these puzzles are going to require you to reference documentation that is separate from the actual game, which wasn't a problem when these games came out because they usually came with a small book or something of that sort that you could easily use. But now in today's time, you basically need an online version of that in order to get through some of the mysteries. But I love this collection. I think it's absolutely amazing. Well worth experiencing. It's currently 50% off for $9.99. Next on the list is Dragon Age: The Veilguard. I did a full live stream and review for this game. It continues Dragon Age's incredible world and also gives you a showcase of the end of Solas's story, who was obviously a very popular character. This has been a divisive game, to say the least. You can look at my review if you want to see some content that'll help you figure out what is actually real criticism and what are some things that people are just blowing out of proportion. Overall, I was disappointed by this experience, but I do feel like Veilguard is worth playing and worth experiencing. There are a lot of good aspects of the game, even if it does take you a while to get to them. Currently, it's 35% off, bringing the price down to $38.99. Next up is Space Marine 2. I did a full live stream of the playthrough. Never got a chance to review this game, but honestly, I had a great time with it. I really feel like any Warhammer fan should absolutely pick this up. It's incredible, great fun, fantastic mechanics. The combat encounters really feel like swarms of enemies are just surrounding you and trying to destroy you. It's great in co-op. Playing this together with friends and trying to figure out different situations together was really cool. I think this, along with, of course, Rogue Trader, which we'll talk about later on, is great preparation for the new Warhammer TV show that has been announced. If you haven't played this yet, absolutely go ahead and give it a shot. It's currently 25% off for $44.99. Next up is Dragon's Dogma 2. We live streamed about 2/3 of this game on the channel. It was fun for a while. The combat is really interesting. I did feel like it got a little bit repetitive, but at the same time, Dragon's Dogma 2 is giving you something that really no other game provides as far as walking around these areas and dismantling humongous monsters over and over again. So it is definitely worth experiencing. One thing I was disappointed about though, I played the first Dragon's Dogma. By far my favorite class was Magic Archer. I felt like it took way too long to get Magic Archer and I think one other major class, and that was a big turnoff for me in regards to the game. So you could potentially end up being stuck with mechanics for an extended period of time that you're not really interested in. But regardless, I think Dragon's Dogma 2 is really interesting and well worth playing if you enjoy combat heavy games, because in my opinion, the story kind of falls apart and doesn't really make sense over the long haul. Currently, it has a 43% discount, bringing the price down to $39.89. Next up is the Thaumaturge. I live streamed a few episodes of this game. It is so dark and moody, and it feels so exotic and different. Really cool. To be honest, it almost feels like playing as Constantine in a Witcher world. The art is so interesting. The way it mixes different colors to give you a particular palette is just super cool, and that makes the combat even more enjoyable. This game pretty much constantly feels like a visual feast. Speaking of combat, the mechanics are very interesting. You're basically trying to take over these demons, and as you bring on new demons, you're going to get new mechanics that you're able to use and then expand your arsenal. Really interesting system that you have to think through. It's absolutely possible to create a build that flat out doesn't work and causes you to get kicked around. So definitely enjoy my time with this. I do at some point plan to circle back and probably finish the whole thing, maybe even do a review. I also believe that it recently got a console release. So before it was just on PC, but I believe if you're on consoles, you can play it now as well. It's got a 40% discount for $20.99. Next up is Jagged Alliance 3. I did a couple of major guides for this game, combing through all of the mercenaries. This game is hilarious. You basically play as someone who's pulling together a team of online mercenaries, and together you have to figure out how to liberate this island from occupation. These mercenaries all kind of know each other, and many of them have special relationships, whether they may be married or ex-lovers or flirting with each other, or they can't stand each other. All of them have certain banter, and it makes it really entertaining mixing different people together. There's also a wide array of mechanics that each merc can serve, different perks and traits that they can potentially come with. And so figuring out how to mix your team in a way where it'll be able to consistently overcome combat objectives is a really interesting puzzle for you to solve. The combat encounters are very challenging, especially if you up the difficulty. So for those of you who love being put to the test, this is a great game for you to jump into. And as I mentioned before, it's just got a lot of character. There's a ton of character in Jagged Alliance 2. It doesn't take itself too seriously. And so that kept me smiling or flat out laughing while I was playing this game. Currently, it's got a 50% discount for $22.49. Greedfall 2 has been in early access for a little while now. I did a 1-episode live stream so people could get an idea of what it's like. The interesting thing about this game, I played Greedfall 1 and I enjoyed it, but I also felt like it was mediocre and needed to be improved in a lot of ways. And Greedfall 2, developer Spider Studios is going in a very different direction, and the combat is very akin to Dragon Age Origins. And it's kind of interesting to see this game be more like Origins, way more like Origins, frankly, than Veilguard was. So for people who are looking to scratch that itch, this is definitely a game you should probably be looking out for. It's all about mixing guns and magic. And so you got a lot of flexibility in how you build up your characters. I'm definitely intrigued by what they're doing, but early access was rough when I played it. They've done multiple patches since then, and I haven't revisited yet, so it might be a very different game. But at the time that I played it, I was like, yeah, I'm not sure this is coming out in 2025, so we'll see. Currently, it's got a 20% discount for $31.99. Next up is Outer Worlds. I played just about every game from Obsidian. This one was no exception. I played it before I had a channel though, so there's no content on the channel about this. Outer Worlds had a great sense of humor, interesting guns and mechanics. Cool world where you're basically walking around in places where corporations have taken over everything, which it really isn't too far from the world we live in now. So it's got a lot of cool things that are different from other Obsidian games I played. Unfortunately, Outer Worlds also kind of didn't feel like a full game to me. It felt like it needed some more content, or some aspects of it needed to be fleshed out. So I would definitely recommend playing it. I enjoyed it. Just don't expect it to be on par with like Fallout New Vegas or some of the other major games that they've been known for. A sequel for Outer Worlds is coming out in 2025, so that's all the more reason for you to go ahead and jump in and be prepared when the new game is released. Outer Worlds has a 50% discount for $14.99. Next up is Midnight Suns. I did a review of this game and we live streamed for 1 episode. The combat is incredible. Don't let the footage fool you. I know when you all see those cards come up, you immediately say to yourself, oh, this is trash, this is not for me. No, Midnight Suns combat is amazing and a big draw of the game. From a visual standpoint, they did an incredible job of recreating some of the most popular moves of all your favorite Marvel heroes. So when Blade is slashing away at enemies, or when Iron Man is flying up in the sky laying down missiles, or Captain America is throwing his shield, it all hits hard and just looks absolutely fantastic. Unfortunately, on the flip side, the writing is abysmal. Very poor representations of some of the characters, most especially Blade. And so towards the end, many people kind of just skip through the dialogue to get to the combat as quickly as possible. Really hoping for a sequel to this game, and I hope if we get one, they put a lot more resources and effort into the writing and to the dialogue and interactions of all the different characters. But regardless, I really think if you're a huge Marvel fan, Midnight Suns is a must-play game. For the combat alone, it's absolutely worth it. It's got an 85% discount, bringing the game down to $8.99. All right, and with all that out the way, let's finally get to CRPGs, what this channel is known for. starting with Solasta, Crown of the Magister. During the Game Awards, it was announced Solasta 2 Early Access will be coming out in 2025. So now is a great time to go ahead and dive in. Solasta has one of the best character creation systems I've ever experienced in a game. It is a very faithful interpretation of D&D mechanics, as opposed to Baldur's Gate 3, which is amazing, but a lot of what they've done in that game is homebrewed. Solasta doesn't homebrew most of their stuff. Instead, they try to take those exact mechanics and interpret them for video game format to the best of their ability. It is amazing, and even for people who have no exposure to D&D whatsoever, it's very, very easy to go into that character creator and put together the exact type of character you want. Just amazing stuff. The combat in this game is fantastic. There are a lot of elements you usually don't see in games that they took the time to make sure work right. For example, flying. Enemies can fly up into the air and rain down fireballs on your entire squad, which makes melee characters unable to hit those enemies. So you really got to make sure you have a properly balanced party that is prepared to deal with a multitude of different situations. Just absolutely fantastic stuff. Solasta is well worth your time. Unfortunately, it's yet another game that suffers from extremely poor writing. Also, the graphics, as you can probably tell, are nothing to write home about. Your characters in particular are going to look flat out ugly. The interesting thing about Solasta is, in addition to the base game, there were 3 DLC packs. So each one of these packs is a 20-hour campaign, as the base game was. In my personal opinion, the writing of Solasta got better with each one. And by the time you got to the last DLC, you were like, okay, this is a serviceable story. It's not blowing me away. It's not full of memorable characters, but it's serviceable. It's not turning me off the way Crown of the Magister story just flat out turned me off. Currently, the base game has a 70% discount for $8.99, but there is a package where you can buy the base game and all 3 DLCs. I think that's absolutely worth it. Again, the entire Solasta series is a great time. There's a 61% discount for this bundle for $32.72. Highly recommend you go ahead and jump into that in preparation for Solasta 2. Next up, Pillars of Eternity Collection. You all already know Avowed is coming out in February. Not a direct continuation for Pillars of Eternity. It is a different series, but it is set after the events of Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire, and they've already confirmed that some Deadfire characters are going to pop up in this game. So definitely exciting. You all already know I love this series. I did full live stream playthroughs of both games. I reviewed both games. I did full guides on both games. I ranked all the party members in both games. I ranked the classes in Pillars of Eternity 1, and we just started a series ranking all the classes in Deadfire a couple of days ago, starting with Barbarian, and I plan to finish that series before Avowed comes out. Pillars of Eternity just has amazing combat, story, dialogue, themes. Like the first game, it was a very dark. It was about children who could not be born, and you were trying to help people who had lost all hope. And then the second game is a lot more light, has more of a cartoon aesthetic. It's focused more on pirates, right? So it's more funny and lighthearted, but still absolutely fantastic. Both games are well worth your time, but you do not have to play Pillars of Eternity 1 to enjoy Deadfire. And the first one does not have multi-classing, while the second one does, so you can play around with the mechanics a lot more. You can make your own decision about whether or not you want to play one or both, but the collection has a 78% discount, bringing the price down to $8.99. I think that's well worth it. You should just go ahead and pick up both and play through them. You won't regret it. Next is King Arthur Knight's Tale. This is another game where I reviewed it and did a ton of guides along with a couple of live stream episodes. I love this game because of the premise. You play as Mordred, who in the original King Arthur mythos is the villain and someone everybody's trying to turn against. Well, now you're playing as him, and you can choose whether or not you're more of a good guy or you're just as villainous as everybody remembers you. But the interesting thing about this game is that you're going to constantly be reintroduced to different major characters in the King Arthur mythos who already have their own beliefs about who you are. So some of them believe you're evil and they love it. They feel like, hey, you were a competent tyrant. And that's what I would like to be. Whereas there are other people who remember the evil things that you've done and they'll pretty much never forgive you for it, even though they are working with you. So it's really, really interesting running around meeting these people who have these preconceived notions of who you are, and the game gives you the opportunity to either prove them right or show them, hey, I'm a different person now. Really, really cool stuff. Combat is also fantastic and punishing, and really requires you to think a couple of moves ahead and try to make sure that you don't get overwhelmed, because healing is very limited. So in these long campaign missions, you have to make sure you manage things well enough that your party has enough health to be able to make it through the boss without getting wiped. It's really cool stuff. Constantly kept me engaged. I really enjoy it. Currently, this game has a 70% discount, bringing it down to $13.49. It also got a standalone expansion, Legion X, where you play as a completely different group of characters. These are Spartans. One of the really cool aspects of this expansion is I felt like they did a better job of switching up the colors and switching up the visual aesthetic. Knight's Tale kind of had a shade of gray over a lot of the areas that you went through, and sometimes it could make them feel a little bit dreary, whereas I feel like in Legion 9 they did a better job of making things more visually interesting. Legion 9 has a 70% discount, bringing the price down to $5.99. Definitely recommend you pick up both of them. Next up on the list is Passageway of the Ancients. I did a sponsored video for this developer earlier this year showcasing their RPG. It's absolutely old school Baldur's Gate 1, Baldur's Gate 2, Icewind Dale's type of CRPG. So if that's what you all have been looking for, definitely this is something to consider. Very interesting story and puzzles. It used a lot of word puzzles throughout your playthrough that I thought were really cool, set up in a way where it's not too frustrating. You should be able to get through it relatively quickly, but it helps break things up, right? Where you don't feel like you're constantly fighting. It is too linear, especially for this type of game. So it's not a wide-ranging storyline where you have a bunch of different decisions you can make or a bunch of different ways things can happen. It's all pretty much going to happen one way. If you look at Steam right now, a lot of the reviews on it are mixed, but I still put it on this list because everything I've heard, the developers have been very responsive, and it seems like they do want to continue working on this game. And so I assume it's going to continue to get patches and updates. I might circle back to this sometime next year and see how it's holding up. Currently, it has a 30% discount, bringing it price down to $13.99. Next up is Skald against the Black Priory. I did a review for this dark, gritty, impactful game, and I really enjoyed it. The graphics obviously have a strong Ultima vibe, and I know it might be a little disorienting when you look at it, but I'm telling you, when you play it, it just fits right in and it feels really cool. The characters are well detailed, well pixelated. It's an awesome style that feels so different from anything else that I have played. There are also fantastic class mechanics, very deep, a lot for you to unpack to figure out how to make your team the best that they can be. The music holds up extremely well throughout your entire adventure, and the story is great as well. There's just a lot all the way around to love about this game. I had a great time with Skald against the Black Priory. Honestly, probably one of the darkest games I've played in the last 5 years, and we just don't get many of those, right? Everything now seems to be geared towards a broad audience, trying to make as many people feel comfortable as possible, and Skald just doesn't feel that way. Skald feels like a game geared towards adults, for adults, and I really appreciated that about it. It's currently got a 30% discount, bringing the price down to $10.49. Definitely go ahead and pick it up. Next on the list is Broken Roads. We did a 1-episode live stream of this game. It's got a very interesting use of dispositions. basically saying, hey, are you a humanist? Are you Machiavellian? Or are you a combination of the two? And trying to help the game represent the exact type of character that you want. It's a really, really interesting concept that unfortunately doesn't feel completely fleshed out in the game. It had a super rough launch. A lot of people did not like it, but that has not stopped the developer at all. They have made a significant amount of updates to this game, and I know they plan for a major patch to be released sometime next year as well. That patch is supposed to also contain a lot of rewrites throughout the entire game to make the experience more engaging. So my plan is to wait until that major patch comes out, and then I absolutely plan to circle back to the game. But like I already mentioned, they've been doing a bunch of patches anyway, and it appears that a lot of the recent reviews of this game on Steam are much more positive. So it seems like those patches are already having an effect. Hopefully after this major patch next year, Broken Roads will be a game that even more people are able to enjoy. Currently, it's got a 50% discount for $17.49. Next up is Colony Ship, a game that I did review on the channel. You're stuck on a spaceship that will not reach its destination in your lifetime. And this has caused many people to lose hope about whether or not the ship is ever going to actually get where it's supposed to go, and consequently, instead of sticking together and trying to do what's best for the ship, they are feuding and splitting up territory and basically turning against each other. This game has the best pacifist run I've ever experienced. It's not enough to just say, hey, I won't engage in combat. Oftentimes, not engaging in combat is going to force you to make decisions that might turn your stomach, that might come off as cowardly or evil. So you have to really, really be willing to commit to this in order to end the game without having ever harmed anyone. I thought that was so cool, so interesting. Really, really enjoyed that. I also love the sci-fi feel of this game. There's a lot of different gadgets and objects and things you interact with that reinforce the sci-fi universe that they have created here. And the story is fantastic as well. It's just really, really worth experiencing Colony Ship at least once. I haven't heard how well this game actually did. There seem to be some real reservations about whether or not we'll ever get a sequel where the ship lands where it was supposed to go. I hope that does happen. I think this game absolutely deserves it. So we'll see what the future holds. It's currently got a 40% discount, bringing the price down to $23.99. Next up is Sovereign Syndicate. I reviewed this game that has strong shades of Disco Elysium, but it does enough different to make it stand out as its own separate game. One of the interesting things about this game is you have 3 different protagonists, and the game kind of jumps around to their different perspectives as you play. Each one of them has completely different mechanics, and so it's a really interesting system where every time you jump to a different person, it's not like you're doing the exact same thing. You've got to approach the game in a little bit of a different way, which I found to be interesting. There's a wide array of races in this game, from Cyclops to Minotaurs to all types of different creatures. And so it just makes it feel like a true fantasy world. I love that. I thought that was so cool for them to do. There's also a murder mystery investigation that all 3 of them are engaged in. I thought that was really nice as well. I love when games allow me to investigate things. I didn't like the way that it ended. I felt like it could have been done better, but the journey was absolutely well worth it. And again, I strongly recommend you go ahead and pick this up. There's been a lot of hints at a sequel, but I haven't heard anything concrete yet. So hopefully we do at some point get a sequel to this amazing game. It's currently 40% off for $11.99. Next up is Black Geyser, Courier of Darkness. I reviewed this game. I had a ton of fun with this game. I played as a summoner, and I thought the mechanics for that class were super interesting. And it was a lot of fun just filling up the whole screen with your various little critters. This game has a very old school feel, so it's another one that has a lot of shades of Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, along with Icewind Dale. So again, if you love that style of gaming, Black Geyser is absolutely worth you getting into. It is definitely rough around the edges. It's absolutely an indie CRPG, so it doesn't feel like a completely full game. There is supposed to be a major DLC update sometime next year. They did a Kickstarter for it that was successful, and so I'm not clear yet on what kind of content is supposed to be there, but definitely seems like I'm going to be circling back to this game at some point in 2025. I would recommend you pick it up. It's currently got a 60% discount for $11.99. Next on the list is Capes. Have you ever wanted to play as a team of superheroes who run around in different areas beating up bad guys and saving civilians? Capes is absolutely the game for you. It gives you an incredible team of widely diverse characters who all approach combat in very distinctly different ways. I thought that was so freaking cool. Whether it be the speedster or the guy who uses telekinesis, or the bruiser or the tank, or the chick who can teleport to different areas to attack enemies, all of the party members have completely different mechanics that you can combine in very interesting ways. And so figuring out which team members you prefer is a really cool and interesting process that frankly never got old. And the combat encounters definitely challenge you. It definitely requires that you use everything at your disposal to get through the scenarios that you're being presented with. I had an absolute blast with Capes. Can't recommend this game highly enough. It does have a 30% discount currently for $25.99, and I do have a review on the channel, so you can look at that if you want more information about it. Next game on the list is one that I played, but I played it before I have a channel, so at some point I absolutely want to circle back to this. I want to live stream this game with all of you, and I want to do a full review. Wasteland 3 is honestly one of my favorite games all time. Fantastic sense of humor. This game will have you laughing out loud at multiple points, and the gun mechanics are amazing. Whether you're using sniper rifles, rocket launchers, assault rifles, or shotguns, there's really just a lot of cool perks available to tailor your character in the exact way that you want. Putting together your team and figuring out what's the right mix to approach the different combat scenarios was just absolutely awesome. Usually, I don't like those Wasteland games. Unlike a lot of other people who are head over heels for games like Fallout, I'm not really that big into them. But for whatever reason, in Wasteland 3, it really works for me. I think they did an incredible job with the setting, and the developer strongly supported this game by giving it multiple major DLC packs that also improved the overall main game, which is another reason why I want to circle back to this game, because I only played the base version, so I haven't played it since the time it got all these DLC updates. I'm sure it's an even better game now. Cannot wait to get into it. It's 80% off for $9.99. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 has a sequel that supposedly is going to come out next year. We'll see. I did a review for this game. You all already know it's one of my favorite games all time. Bloodlines does not waste your time. Every building that's there, every character that's there that you can see, it serves a purpose and it's part of a quest. And everything just feels tight and purposeful. It always feels like you're working towards a particular goal. I love that about it. It has different clans that you can choose from at the beginning of the game, and many of them feel like completely separate playthroughs. Whether you're playing as the Nosferatu, who can't walk the streets because just seeing them is a violation of the Masquerade. So you either have to use glamours more, or you're gonna have to walk around in the sewers more and use them to transit. Or the Malkavians, who are absolutely psychotic and can hear secret whispers from distant ancestors that help them to understand more about the game than what the player might even be able to. It's just all really, really cool stuff. Definitely recommend you jump into this game, especially if you have no exposure to Vampire the Masquerade. This is a great way to become familiar with its lore and all of its characters in preparation for the sequel coming out next year that will hopefully end up good. The base game is available at a 50% discount for $9.99. It's also a part of the Activision Collection Bundle, which combines 53 games across Activision's time span, including Arcanum, Phantasmagoria, Geometry Wars, Prototype, all of the Call of Duty games. So basically every Activision game that's ever come out is all together in this bundle. That bundle has a 59% discount for $382.32. Next up on the list, Disco Elysium, probably in my opinion, the best written video game of all time. I did a review for this game, specifically the final cut, which adds a ton of voice acting into the game and makes it an even better experience. Definitely worth checking out, even if you played the original base game version of Disco Elysium. This game truly makes you feel like you're playing as someone who has absolutely lost their mind. And a lot of times games will just say a particular character is crazy, but when you're playing through the game, you don't really feel that way. You know, you're like, whatever. That's just something you threw out there. And Disco Elysium, you really feel like you're playing as someone who's holding on by a thread and desperately trying to grasp onto any semblance of sanity. And if you're able to get to the end game and help them pull together all the pieces and really repair his mind, it's a fantastic warm feeling that just brings the entire journey home. The way you level up in this game is just awesome. It's all based around your personality. What kind of person are you, and what sort of things do you value are important to you? Different aspects of your personality will pop up in conversations, and the stronger you build them up, the more they're going to be able to chime in and give you valuable tidbits. It's really cool, unique system that I had never seen before Disco Elysium, and now I see multiple games doing it because other developers realize, whoa, this is a really interesting way to have the player go through a game. Currently, it's got a 75% discount, bringing the price down to $9.99. Next up is Divinity Original Sin 2. I did a live stream of this game where we got through, I think, half of it, maybe 2/3 of it. Unfortunately, I had to cut it off, and I don't remember why. I think it was right around the time Baldur's Gate 3 came out, and maybe that's why we didn't finish it. But I've honestly decided we're going to revisit the whole series. When it's time for Larian's next game to come out, we'll go back and play Divinity Original Sin 1 first, and then we'll also get into 2. This game is unquestionably one of the greatest CRPGs of all time. Fantastic story, incredible use of color. The colors just pop off on the screen no matter where you are or what you're doing. Combat is a blast, and it really rewards creativity. You can combine different elements to create different effects to absolutely wreak havoc against your enemies. The music is awesome and very memorable. The different characters you can play as all have backstories that are very enthralling as well. Just all the way around, this game is a great time, and I'm really hoping that Larian's next game is either a sci-fi extravaganza or it's Divinity Original Sin 3. So I would love to see a proper sequel to this game, because that is its only weak point. It doesn't end on what I consider to be a high note. It definitely feels like this game needed some more content, and so I would love to see them circle back and finish that out. It's currently got a 70% discount for $13.49. Next up on the list, Baldur's Gate 3. Obviously, one of the greatest CRPGs of all time. Larian's magnum opus. This game just has it all. A ton of content, incredible story, fantastic graphics, amazing music, incredible mechanics that are both deep and can be complex if you really want to dig into them, or at the same time, it's very simple and easy for a brand new D&D player to just dig in and make something that they want. In fact, I would say out of all the CRPGs, Baldur's Gate 3, if you're brand new to CRPGs, is the one you should play. There's another game on this list that I feel like is better, but it's also much more complicated. So if you're looking for a way to just be introduced into this slice of life, Baldur's Gate 3 is where it's at. Currently, the game has a 20% discount for $47.99. If you haven't played it yet, what are you waiting for? Go ahead and pick it up now. Next on the list, you all already know what these last two games have got to be. Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader. I'm a massive fan of just about everything Owlcat has put out. Rogue Trader is no exception. The best way to get yourself introduced to the Warhammer lore. It is just going to be 100 hours of learning more and more and more and more about everything related to Warhammer. This is an incredible experience. Fantastic archetypes that you can set up for yourself and your companions. Very, very deep mechanics. And you get multiple layers of different archetypes. So you have to figure out how to combine them all into an effective character that you can use on the battlefield. Speaking of the battlefield, the game loves to throw waves upon waves of large groups of enemies at you, and it just feels amazing. It really feels in Rogue Trader like the whole world has gone mad and it's trying to turn against you. Not only does it have fantastic music, but it's very, very Warhammer authentic music. So a lot of organs, a lot of very, very dark and moody atmosphere type of music. It's just great stuff. Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader currently has a 45% discount, bringing the price down to $27.49. And then, of course, we have Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. In my opinion, the greatest CRPG ever made. I have a ton of content on this game, more content than I have for any other game by far. It has over 200 classes that you can choose from, and you can multi-class between many of them. So there's a lot of different options about how you put together your character. Great set of party members. They all have incredible stories, fantastic quest lines. Many of them have romances, and some of those romances really hit hard. There's a wide branching storyline that changes significantly based upon a mythic path that you select, which is basically like a specialization, but it puts you on a journey of becoming a particular type of character, whether it be an angel or a lich or a demon, and this has a significant impact on the type of story that you experience. This choice also changes what type of music you're going to experience, and all of the different music in this game is fantastic. Huge focus on horns and really booming sounds to make it seem like it's almost a marching band who's signaling your arrival, your victory, and the battles that are to come. Just amazing stuff. Again, I don't recommend Wrath of the Righteous for people who are new to CRPGs and have no exposure to it whatsoever. It is complicated. It is something where you really got to be willing to take your time, read, and dive into the mechanics. But if you've already had some exposure due to a game like Baldur's Gate 3, then I feel like Wrath of the Righteous should be the next one up. Once again, the greatest CRPG that has ever been made. The base game has a 70% discount for $11.99. That alone is worth it, but there's also a Game of the Year version that contains not only the base game, but all of the DLC, and there was a lot, and it adds a lot of content, a lot of stuff for the main game. All of that DLC is going to be in the Game of the Year version. That version has a 20% discount for $39.99. Can't recommend highly enough. Pick up that Game of the Year version. You will have an absolute blast. That finally brings to a close all the games I want to call out for the Steam Winter Sale. Hopefully you heard something that motivates you, that makes you want to go ahead and buy a game. Whatever game you get, I hope you enjoy it. Make sure you check the channel. Most likely, I have at least one video or some content regarding the game that you pick up. If you want some additional information, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I always appreciate you all's feedback. I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.